Socks are the #1 most requested item at homeless shelters. Underwear second, and shirts are third. At Bombas, socks were first, made with comfortable details for everyday wearing. Then underwear, and shirts too, all designed to perfectly fit. At Bombas, every item you purchase means you're donating an essential clothing item to someone in need. One comfortable clothing item for you, one donated to someone in need. Bombas, comfort for all. Get 20% off your purchase at bombas.com/comfy.
It's time for our weekly conversation with senior writer at foxsports.com, Aaron Torres. Brought to you by your local Steel dealer. If you want power and reliability, you want a Steel. To find a dealer near you, visit steeldealers.com. Now with Aaron Torres, here's Ian Furness.
And he joins us on the Beacon Plumbing Hotline. Aaron, how are you, my man?
Well, Ian, last time I was on, it was the night of the Gonzaga-UCLA 1-2. I was in Vegas. I was hanging out. It's amazing how much in the world of college sports, specifically college football, can change in 14 days. Did you expect when we last spoke that Notre Dame, Oklahoma would be looking for coaches on top of LSU and USC, which you and I have seemingly been talking about every week for months now?
No, and nor did I expect Oregon to be looking for a coach either, which is also happening.
I probably should have referenced that one as well. There's so many I can't even keep up.
It's nuts. Hey, I want to get to all that, and then we'll touch in on some college basketball before we're all said and done here. You've been outspoken about this, and I'm glad you have been. The Mario Cristobal thing to me, and I don't know, I'm trying to think if there was a coaching change and move and hire that was handled and can be, and maybe it just is impossible for them to be handled, quote, well. But what happened at Miami with Manny Diaz to me is just messed up. Like having this guy hanging out there waiting to hear whether or not Cristobal says yes or no while he's allegedly trying to get ready for the Pac-12 championship game, which obviously he wasn't fully 100% bought into because he'd already been speaking to them. This whole thing was a mess.
Yeah, listen, I'm not Mr. Moralist about all this stuff. I had no problem with Brian Kelly making the decision that he did. I had no problem with Lincoln Riley making the decision that he did. By the way, I had no problem with USC or Washington making the decisions that they did on the opposite side administratively of getting rid of coaches. What I just didn't like is, Manny, and I understand, and what you said is right. There's no perfect way. I understand that until Mario Cristobal is the head coach of the University of Miami, he's got to be the head coach of the University of Oregon, and that means this time of year before the bowl game, going on the road, talking to recruits, all that stuff. But, it's what you've said, Ian. It's the idea that Manny Diaz has to walk into a kid's home with a Miami polo on, trying to explain to that kid why they need to come to Miami while he's not even sure of what his situation is there. There's no perfect way, but my only issue is exactly how it was handled. Is if you know this isn't your guy, get rid of him, right? And I think the big thing with Miami that's so unique is that they kind of administratively made this decision. We're all in on football, and they don't even have an AD. So it's not as though there's one person to blame. It was clunky. They knew the guy they wanted in many ways. Hey, respect to them in the same way that I respect USC for getting their guy, LSU for getting their guy. But I'm just with you. The way that it was handled, even if you kind of knew, it felt like by about midday Sunday, we kind of knew where the tea leaves were going. Relieve Manny Diaz of his duties. If you know it's coming, make the move. And I guess I think it's in many ways it was probably to protect Mario Cristobal so he could tell his team in person. But yeah, I was just kind of appalled and disappointed with the way it was handled. And last little thought, this is, everybody gets mad at the coaches for making the moves that they did, Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley. It's because, listen, man, this is a thankless business, and they'll do to you what they did to Manny Diaz if they have to, and so there's no reason that you shouldn't be watching your own back as a coach yourself.
Aaron Torres joining us, Fox Sports, Aaron Torres podcast. All right, I'm gonna throw something out at you that it may just be the dumbest thing I ever say, but maybe it'll come proving to be, come to fruition along the way. I'll preface it by this. College athletics, and maybe more so football than basketball, are so much based on the brand and making assumptions of the brand. I'll give you an example. Everyone assumes that Georgia's a great football team because they're in the SEC and they ran the table until they finally played a good team, because the best teams they had played at that point were 9-3 and 8-4. But everyone assumes Georgia's a phenomenal team. Then they get boat raced. We'll see what happens in the playoff. Much like this, everyone assumes that Lincoln Riley is a home run hire at USC. And I don't think there's any doubt that he can coach, right? We've seen what he can do as a coach in the last few years since he took over for Bob Stoops. My question is, do we really know if he can build a program back up? He inherited a team at Oklahoma that was a combined 22-4 the previous 2 years under Bob Stoops and was 17-1 in conference play the previous 2 years under Bob Stoops. He took over a program that was at a high level. Aaron, he didn't take over a 4-8 team.
Well, I say on my podcast all the time is that in what we do, everybody wants to have the declarative, it's this or it's that. It's a good hire or it's a bad hire. This team is a Super Bowl contender or they're not. And there's a lot of gray area in what we do. And so I think with Lincoln Riley, both things are very much true. I think that when you look at this on paper, when you factor in everything, young, dynamic, fun offense, we've talked for months, Ian, about the next USC coach, if they wanted to have success, was going to have to win the press conference. A 7-5 James Franklin isn't going to make people in LA rush to the ticket window to get tickets. Lincoln Riley had been recruiting really well in Southern California already, and we know the guys that he's flipped. But what is also true, that is true. Like, it was as good of a hire on paper as you can possibly have. What is also true is the element that you brought in, is he's never built a program. In some ways, you could argue the program has, I guess you would say, regressed a little bit in the years that he's been there. I think that's probably a little bit unfair. But, year one, they're in that iconic playoff game against Georgia where they're a player or two away from competing for a national championship. Year two, year three, make a playoff. Year four last year, they win the Big 12, but they don't make the playoff. And this year, of course, finish only 10-2. And so that's kind of how I look at it. Is I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what he can do for USC, which hopefully in turn will elevate the Pac-12. But I think there is this element to that as well. And it's really funny. I'll kind of wrap on this is that, when the hire was made, I did a segment on my podcast, and I also put up a poll. Which coach wins a national championship first, Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly at their new school? I actually think I think there's a stronger argument for Brian Kelly, and we could get into that if you want. But I assume that everybody would say Lincoln Riley. He seems to be more well regarded in football. So, people seem to like him more. It seems like people are rooting against Brian Kelly. Easier pathway to the playoff. And it was probably 65-35 in favor of Brian Kelly at LSU. So I think it speaks to whatever you see on social media about how people claim that they feel about Brian Kelly. They believe that he is capable of taking LSU to a national championship, maybe in large part because of what other coaches have done there. And there may still be some more public skepticism of Lincoln Riley than you would think, based on everything that we kind of see on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Brian Kelly's unlikable, first of all, and Lincoln Riley's more likable. But you know what's going to happen. You know how it works, man. You're going to be doing your show on a Saturday night, and USC is going to lose the game in November, their ninth conference game is what's going to happen. They're going to lose in Tempe, or they're going to lose in Corvallis. They're going to lose that game they should never lose, and people will just bag on the Pac-12 again, even though they're playing a 9-game conference schedule and they're not playing Appalachian State, in November like the SEC is. But Lincoln Riley will not be immune from the late season Pac-12 loss. That will happen. That'll happen.
Yeah, well, it's been going on. It's been going on since the Chip Kelly days. So no, it's definitely something. And I would say, we don't know what Oregon's going to do, but I'm excited about Kalen DeBoer at Washington. I'm excited about Lincoln Riley. I like the hires that were made in this conference, and I know the UW Husky stuff is more relevant to what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, but I'm just really excited. I am excited because the thing is, we are all of the age where we all know what USC is capable of in a way that somebody under 20, 25 might not. And so I think Lincoln Riley, he's of that age where he was coming up as a young coach seeing those USC teams, and I think that he knows the potential of it. So I will say selfishly, I am very excited to see if he can make it work. And the one thing we know, he always recruits elite skill position talent, and that a lot of that skill position talent of late has come from Southern California. So it just seems like there is a really, really, really high ceiling for Lincoln Riley at USC. But to your point, Ian, like the guy's got to deliver, and it's not as though he's been bad. But as you said, it's not as though. And I'll say one last thing too, and I know I'm going a lot of different directions. Is as you said, I'm hosting Fox Sports Radio every Saturday night. There's a lot of USC games on when I'm on air. I think that program is a little further behind than people realize. This isn't a 1 year go from 4-8 to 11-1, year 2 compete for a national championship type rebuild. It's going to take a lot longer than that.
Final thing for you, Aaron, college basketball. Is there any concern? And we had a hell of a week in college basketball. Alabama came up here to Seattle and spanked Gonzaga. Gonzaga now with a couple losses. They didn't lose until April of last year. They've got 2 already. Now, quality teams, I get that. Any concern from what you've seen about Gonzaga?
No, not really. Listen, first of all, I was one. I did not believe they were the number 1 team in the country. It seemed pretty consensus outside of myself. When I say I didn't think they were going to be number 1, I thought they were about the 4th, 5th best team on paper coming into the season. Now, some of the teams that I love, UCLA, we're going to find out pretty soon how good they are. They play Marquette this weekend, stuff like that. So maybe I was wrong on who's actually ahead of them, but I just bring it up to say I didn't think it was as consensus as everybody else seemed to think. And what I said in the preseason was, if you're looking for a team that I think will be a little bit down, I think it's Gonzaga. And down for Gonzaga is instead of entering the tournament, 37-2, it's 33-4. And to be 33-4, you got to take a couple losses in these early season games. I was at the Duke game. The Duke game could have gone either way. The Alabama game was a little bit more decisive, but even then they made their run. And so I think what you're looking at, Ian, is a team that, last year, and I'm sure we've talked about this. I don't remember if we have, but I hate whatever you think of Mark Few, I hate the Gonzaga's overrated talk. I mean, there was literally one team in college basketball last year that was better than them, and it just so happened they had to play them in the national championship game. And the way college basketball works, we all know it, is the best team doesn't always win. The best team doesn't always make the Final Four. The best team doesn't always play for a championship. And so if somehow Baylor gets knocked out somewhere else along the way, Gonzaga's your 2021 national champion. And so, I never liked the idea that they're overrated, but I think this year they're a team that's probably on par with the top 5-6 teams in the country. But I think that gap between, say, 1 and 2 and, say, 6, 7, 8 is not what it was last year. I think right now we're looking at a reality. I don't know if there is a consensus number 1. As Purdue looks good, but they've had a couple close calls along the way. Duke looks awesome, but they lost at Ohio State. Baylor is again coming on strong, but their biggest tests are coming up. Villanova plays tonight, on and on and on and on and on. And so I just bring it up to say, I wouldn't be worried if I was. Unless the standard is now, the number 1 team in the country and basically undefeated going into the tournament, which I don't think is fair or realistic, I would not be worried. This is who they are. They're going to end up on that 1-2 line. They're going to win a lot of games, and they're going to have a chance to compete for a championship. And it doesn't matter what sport you follow, what team you follow. At the end of the season, if you have a team good enough to win it, that's all you can really ask for.
Great stuff, my man. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Let's talk next week, and we'll get some more college hoops in there as well, man. Thank you.
Would you rather have wireless on the most reliable network nationwide or unlimited with 5G for $30 a month per line? You don't have to choose with Xfinity Mobile. Wireless so good it keeps one-upping itself. Most reliable based on RootMetric US report. Results vary, not an endorsement. $30 per month per line when you get 4 lines.